Hey everybody, this is Tony.
And this is Paul, and we're coming at you from the Friends for Life podcast, where we discuss the ongoing lives and issues of people with developmental disabilities to spark positive change in the field.
And we have a lot of fun doing it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Friends for Life podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. Today we have Roshonda Woodley of A Good Life. Roshonda, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. It's the prettiest day we've had in quite some time. So.
Man, it really is. It's a beautiful day. That means Tony and I will be sweating profusely in the studio.
Yes.
No matter how many times we ask to turn all the vents off, we're always just sweating. Maybe we need to turn them back on.
Yeah, now we need some AC in this joint.
But anyways, as is tradition on the Friends for Life podcast, we're very interested to see how you got into the DD field, because that's what the podcast is about. We talk all things DD. So how did that journey start for you specifically?
Wow, very interesting. And actually, I am a believer, and I just think it was by fate. But I'll go into the story. So I was an intern, started off in the field of speech-language pathology. So we had an internship that we had to do, and I was out sick with bronchitis. So when I got back, they were like, well, the only place left is this place called Northwest Ohio Developmental Center. And literally, it's the worst placement. And we're sorry, but that's all that's left.
Wow, they even told you that.
Okay, all right. So I go to this place, and I get there, and I'm hooked up with the activities people. And we go to the different, at the time, cottages. And we have, all kinds of individuals from varying levels. And this is my first experience working with individuals with DD. So I have no expectations. I know nothing. I'm so green. And I was scared to death, by the way, because of everything that people have said. Long story short, it was one of the most gratifying experiences I ever had. I was so afraid of the clients, and the ones that I was so afraid of, I loved the most when I left there. Mm-hmm. It was just an amazing experience. And so I left that placement and moved to Arkansas and ended up working at a developmental center there. And wow. I flourished there. I ended up, within the first year, I became a house manager and everything. I was this activities guru. I was one of those people that always took the clients out. It was beautiful there. I never stayed in the building. I was always out walking, or I was planning some kind of activity. Nice. or spending my own money, because back then we had this thing called dollar movies. So I would take all the clients to the movies.
Man, $1 show.
For $1. And buy them popcorn and pop and still have money to pay rent later. So it was just,
the good old days.
Yes, and I loved it. So fast forward, things happened, and my father passed away. And I moved back to Toledo and eventually applied for NODC and stayed there for 13 years. And I loved it. And I also ended up becoming a behavior specialist. And that's when I really, really got to get my really create my niche, I was really good at just sitting back and looking at the individuals and seeing their needs and understanding what it is that helped them become better. So an individual that would have lots of behavior issues, I learned that if you take them off these grounds, they kind of were a different person. Mm-hmm. And I got to learn how I sat back and watched how people interact with the individuals. And I learned that different ways of interaction did not work, and others did. So that's kind of how I got started. Just one of the most wonderful experiences, just kind of fell into this work, and I'm still here.
I think that's always the fun part, is when you become a lifer in this, it's typically because you end up picking something because it's I don't know what's the best way. The fulfillment changes. So from what you're saying, you got kind of the raw end of the deal at first, but it helped put you into the trajectory on where you are now. How long did you stay in just more as in the mindset of working for someone else before you decide, man, I want to start my own. I want to do this myself?
Well, quite a while. So honestly, this is probably my 23rd year. March 19th would be 23 years working for the state of Ohio.
Wow. Nice.
And combined with 6 years working for the county board, but in the PERS system for 24 years as a whole.
Nice.
So I've always wanted to do, well, I shouldn't say always, probably in the last 10, 15 maybe years, I've wanted to do it, but just, didn't really know how. And then I ventured off to the county board. Then it was a conflict of interest. You couldn't do it. So then that took it off the table. And then I found my way back to the state and just working with different individuals and struggling with watching them leave the DC and not have good providers to be able to understand the things that they face in a developmental center and having to navigate being in the community and learning how to be independent. That is a huge issue for a lot of individuals leaving a DC. Mm-hmm. They go from being in the most restrictive setting to being kind of like, hey, it's your world. Do what you want to do. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you want to eat? Where do you want to grocery shop? Oh, you don't want to go there? We'll go to the one in Perrysburg. Okay, fine. It's like, it's overwhelming, and sometimes they struggle with that.
Yeah.
So just wanting to be a provider that understood that dynamic and wanted to be able to provide some type of buffer for them so that they can transition and make that transition and be able to stay out there and not have to go back to the DC. So
that is a very good point. And even people like myself, I've been doing this for quite a while also, and I've never really even put it together like that. You're almost transitioning someone from, I don't want to say incarceration, but there are, like you said, a lot of rules, a lot of structured events that take place in a place like NODC. Do you find it challenging? I've found it challenging in the past, but rewarding if possible.
Exactly. It's very challenging, and it's hard to help people understand, the number of choices that they're going to have once they leave a developmental center. And places like NODC is so wonderful because they do what they do because people usually come there because they're in crisis.
Yes.
So when you're in crisis, you do need more structure. But then as you transition out and you don't need that structure anymore, it kind of becomes a fear factor for people because it's like, well, if I get back to making all these choices, am I going to end up back in the DC? And so sometimes our greatest fears end up being our reality.
Yes.
So that's what happens. So they get out there. They don't know how to navigate it. People don't understand them. They, some of the things that they do to cope are some of the most difficult things or different ways of expression, meaning aggression and some of the other routes of having to navigate all that manifests itself maybe in trying to harm themselves or seeking hospitalizations. And so as a provider, those are very tough, difficult things for staff to be able to navigate and understand and be able to support people with. So they end up back at the developmental center. And now they're crushed. They're embarrassed.
Yeah.
And now we have to build them back up and then tell them, we got to try it all over again.
Sounds a lot like raising a teenager.
Yeah,
get out. Okay, welcome back. But you got to get out again soon.
I'm so glad you said that because so many times I tell people okay, when people are like, oh my God, this is so horrible. I'm like, but really, let's put this in perspective. How is it different from anything that you deal with your own children or your own teenagers or your own people navigating adulthood? I'm like, and when we look at it that way, it's not so bad. And that's how I spin it to my individuals. I'm like, hey, you're no different than anybody else. You get out there. You try something new. Okay, so it didn't go great the first time, but you get to do it all over again. But you take all that bad stuff that you dealt with, and you get to take that and do it all over again and do it better this time because you know what happened and, how can we plan? And we practice and we plan and we try to figure out, how can we avoid these pitfalls? Who can you call for support? We make a list. We put in a notebook. Those are things that we try to do. Do people utilize those tools all the time? Absolutely, they don't. But, we're at least trying to create that toolbox for them to have to be able to draw from. And so that's the most rewarding thing that I get to do at the Developmental Center now. So, I enjoy that, actually. I enjoy helping individuals that are struggling the most. And those are usually my best friends. So I came into this field afraid of individuals with any kind of behavioral issues or anything like that. And now that is my like niche. That is like my go-to. Like I'm very good with people who struggle the most, who have the most trauma, who have the most issues. And, it's just something, I think it's just a gift, something that, I've been kind of raised to do in some kind of way,
Would you agree? Because one of my very first jobs for the Lucas County Board was a bus aide. And my first routes were NODC routes. Like, no one took the NODC routes first. So those were most of the time, especially if you wanted to come in the union full time, that was your way in. But I found a different kind of relationship than a lot of people. I started bonding with my individuals on my routes, from singing to dancing to learning about them as people, right, versus the people that I seen not doing that, having all of the troubles and problems. Do you think that like our staff nowadays are kind of less involved in our individuals' lives the way that we want them to be so they can develop that connection?
Yes, and I think especially right now, it's just a very difficult, tough time to build that rapport because, people couldn't get out. They're very limited into what they can do with individuals. And when you were able to take an individual off grounds or take them to, well, I say off grounds, but out of their normal home setting, you get to really understand who they are and get to see them in a different light. Mm-hmm. So you can take that experience and bring it back and use that as a way to help them with what they're going through. Like, hey, remember how when you were out and you got upset and then you thought about this or whatever, they can draw from that experience and they bonded with you. So they laughed and they joked and they had fun, they had a great meal, you experienced something new with them. And so now they're more trusting of you to say, hey, I'm going to help you get through this difficult patch or something like that. It helps people bond with you more when you're able to get them out of their natural setting and share a meal with them and do something fun or experience something new. Or maybe, they got to see you do something that maybe you tripped and fell. And they're like, oh, so yeah, sometimes I don't do things perfect either. So you can use that to help them get through a tough patch. And I think we're missing those type of opportunities now because we just can't get out there and do the things that we did before. So it's very restricting in that aspect. And at the DC, they have to be way more cautious because it's a congregate setting. So their interactions are more limited because they can't afford to take that risk to harm the whole entire, home. So
I like when we have these conversations, me as very new to this field and very green in a lot of senses. It's so funny listening.
Green!
Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Paul's the only one in red today.
I don't own any green clothing. I'm sorry.
Dude, you suck.
I know.
Okay, continue.
I'm well aware, trust me. But when we have these conversations, it's so funny because everything you just said is just great life advice in general. Like when you want to work with anyone, if you're at working at a grocery store, you're always going to get better results if you're just a person and you're just treat people well and nice and not outsiders or anything. That's such good advice on a general level. And then especially in this field where it may be a tiny bit harder to, people who are continually having maybe trust issues because they've worked with 50 different people in their lifetime, So it's just great overall advice, and I really like that. And, so to kind of switch topics to a good life, what was your motivation? I mean, you talked about it briefly when you started this organization, but what was kind of your main reasoning for wanting to branch out on your own and become maybe a little more independent with owning your own business and stuff like that? Because, Tony did the same thing. This seems to be what a lot of people want to do in the long term. So what made you take that leap, I guess, is what I'm asking.
So very interesting. So I think, like I said, I've been doing it from this perspective for a very long time. And just seeing that there was a void for people that understood how individuals from a developmental center actually navigate the world. And so wanting to be that person to help them with that. And then to just to be able to do things in a different way. So at a developmental center, we are limited by some of the things that we can do and the interactions we can have with people. I sometimes have to say no way more than I would like to. So in the provider forum sector, we're able to say more yeses. And I'm more of a yes person. I've worked at the county board, so my eyes have been open, and I know all the abilities a person with DD can have. And so I am more focused on their abilities as opposed to restrictions and things that we have to do to help them along the path. So path of growth is sometimes very slow at a developmental center, whereas in the community you can move a little bit faster. I think we're more focused on abilities and giving people independence, whereas a DC is more like, no, we got to protect you, got to make sure that, you're safe. And, all that is very important. But we also want to help people learn how to do these things on their own.
Oh, yes.
Because that's what the ultimate goal is. And so the more we wrap around people, the less they're able to find what it is they can and can't do or will do, or even the fact that they have it within themselves to make this decision or to grow or to prosper. So just wanting to be on the other side of things where I get to say yes more.
Yeah, there you go. I will say that is one of the funnest things that you can do. I was just in my leadership program. Shout outs to Biz Pulser and Chad over at the Ronald McDonald House. We're going through these cool educational modules in which you find out more about yourself and your team on like temperament, mindset, how to interact with one another. And I think from a standpoint of when you have a company, when you learn those things, they go into your everyday life. So you automatically get better with your individuals that you serve. So I love when people like yourself do what you do and you transcend, because you're a very intelligent woman. And I really appreciate any conversation that we've ever had. It's intellectual, it's growth behind it, it's religious, it's a very successful conversation at the end of it. I go away with something new. Are you looking to try to mentor people in the future? I mean, even yourself, because there's a lot of people out here who are just, I try to mentor as much as I can, but I'm only one person. And our community, especially the African American community, needs more people in positions like ours to help others. Is that where you feel like your light is taking you in life, or are you kind of just sitting in the background, just let me know when I'm ready?
Well, you know what? 2 years ago, I didn't think I would be sitting here. So, like I said, I think everything I've done in my life has been led by, a higher power, God. And that is not something that I thought I would want to do, but that's what I do. I mentor people. I help them. I help to encourage them to do better. And as far as the African American community, I'm all about trying to help uplift anyone that wants to do more in their life and to be seen in a different light, So I can't say no. I mean, I hadn't thought about it, but, if the opportunity presents itself, helping, I'm in the helping profession. That's who I am. I'm all about helping. I'm always that person that people can come to and ask, how can I? And if I don't know, I'll give them whatever I know. It may not be a lot, but hey, I may know someone that can help you a little bit better than me. So I'm that person. So I can definitely see that would be something that I would be open to. So thank you for planting that seed.
Hey, when you see greatness, you got to point it out, right?
Well, that's the thing. I've taken from Tony and I read a lot, so we're always nerding out over
books
and stuff, and philosophies and things of that nature that we learn about. And one of the things that I read recently that really kind of made me think a little bit differently is you can be someone's mentor without even realizing it, because if you're just a positive role model for someone, they could be looking up to you and you have no idea. So it's kind of a good reminder in day-to-day life, pretending even someone's looking up to you, so that keeps you more accountable to be okay, I maybe need to be a little more thoughtful in the way I act sometimes, especially me. specifically. But yeah, that's like a really good way to help other people too, because like this isn't a field where you think of like I would need a mentor, you know, but I mean, any field you can need a mentor. You can always get better. You can always grow. You can always learn something. And one of the things that, you know, I've learned from doing this podcast and working with Tony is like compassion goes a long way. You know, it goes really, really far. And also kind of working with individuals to say, no, you can do this. You don't need me to hold your hand sometimes. What are your thoughts on, you know, helping individuals realize that they can be more independent and like do things themselves?
So in my field, in my position at NODC, I am the counselor for the individuals. So I get to practice that an awful lot.
Oh, nice.
A lot of times individuals think that they need me to help them make good choices, and, you know, they have to talk to me, you know, and sometimes they have a really difficult time because they feel like they have to get to me so that they can become, you know, feel centered or feel in control. And I'm like, nope, you know, we've talked about this. You got everything inside. You got this. You can do it. You don't need me to do it, you know? And so, you know, they get to, you know, kind of like, what? Yeah, okay. So I get to watch people fly a lot. And a lot of the individuals I've worked with, they call me they still call me, or they reach me on Facebook or something. So they kind of always check in with me to let me know that they're doing okay. And I remember what you taught me. And, you know, so I'm like, good, you know, like, and sometimes if I get the opportunity, I'm like planting more seeds, like, okay, so, you know, offering meditation or something like that, because I think it's huge with our individuals. Like, we need to encourage them to do more of that. And really, it's just being silent and taking time to breathe and think. And if they practice that more, you know, we won't have as much aggressive incidents as we do with some of our individuals, because it's just that moment of, I don't know what to do next. People are expecting me to do this, so I'm going to give them what they expect. So if you can sit with that moment and relax, sometimes you can make a better decision. So that is something that I've been working on, helping individuals to just, if you don't know what to do, take a moment, take some deep breaths, and just think.
Yeah.
You know, so
in an age where everything has the appearance that we need to do it now, that's great advice overall, because like it's not going to kill somebody to have to wait for an answer for 45 minutes or an hour. You know, it might feel like it, but it's not always the case. So let's peel back the curtain a little bit. How did you and Tony meet each other? Like, how do you know each other? And, you know, what's that been like over the years?
I was in her bushes.
I would believe that.
No.
Well, okay, so I started after I left NODC, because they got rid of all the behavior specialists at one time. So I went over to the county board, and I was an SSA. And he was working for an agency at the time. And the individuals I was working with, he was always like Johnny on the spot with getting me any information I needed. He always was like a great, kind face when you showed up there. And he was always that person that if he didn't know, he would make sure he got you the answer. So, you know, it was just a great interaction. Like, I'm like, oh, wow, so this is what the other side of it looks like, you know. And so actually, just having him be that person that was always ready and always responsive was just really cool. I'm like, okay, because I didn't really find that a lot with a lot of providers. So it was just nice having somebody that you can trust and go to and was honest, and just had just a perfect demeanor, just always kind and just a good person. So it was just a pleasure meeting him.
That's my head getting blown up, everybody.
I'm going to have to cut that part out. Wow.
Well, thank you. And likewise, you know, Roshonda was one of the best SSAs that I could have worked with at that point in time in my career. So everything that she said, I mean, it goes double for her. It was never, Tony, this isn't done. This is a problem. It was, hey, I don't have this and this. You know anything about it? And, you know, our energies meshed well together. So we got to really be a good force for the individuals that we serve together.
Well, that's awesome. And like that goes to prove something that we talk about continually on this podcast. The old adage, what you're going to get more flies with honey than something else. Like,
yeah,
people, like, if you're nice to people, you're just going to have a reputation where people don't think you're just a jerk. And like, who wants to work with that person?
Right.
Exactly. Be nice to people. Even if you got to pretend for the whole day, it'll eventually become a natural part of your being. Like, instead of being nasty and like, how many times have you called somewhere and you just get the nastiest customer service representative and you're like, this isn't even worth trying to get
I'd rather just hang up and redial.
Redial. So no, that's awesome. Like, people, listen, we're telling you, this is how you make it like your life a lot easier and better. So on a side note, so like I said a few minutes ago, Tony and I, huge readers. Tony's a huge movie fanatic. I'm more of like a nerd in like documentaries and stuff. Do you have any kind of stuff that you use to kind of think or get outside the box, whether it be film, music, books, anything that you kind of suggest for people or that you enjoy?
So I do like to, I'm one of those people, I'm a big, huge self-help person. So I love listening to a lot of my mentors are probably like people that are in the self-help field. So I get a lot from that in how to help other people be the best that they can be. And so I'm really into that. So I read a lot. Like I said, my profession, I'm a trained counselor at Inner-to-See. That's my title. I'm psych assistant there. So that's what I do with the individuals. So I'm always like looking up different modalities that I can use with the people that I serve. And I'm kind of a quiet person. I like to hear my inner thoughts. I like to, I meditate a lot, and I just take a lot in from my environment. So I'm in my inner thoughts a lot. So, and I use a lot of those type of podcasts or YouTube, a lot of different people that I enjoy to hear from. So I draw a lot from that and just trying to figure out how to help people be the best that they can be. So
that's awesome. Yeah, and
we love
the YouTube. Tony's always preaching YouTube
University, baby.
It's great. There's so much stuff out there. Anyone can make anything. I love it. It's like one of the coolest things that's ever been invented, in my personal opinion. For what that's worth.
Well, when it comes to education and people like myself, I don't learn traditionally. I didn't learn traditionally, and if I didn't have YouTube back 5 to 8 years ago to help me with some of the transitions of stuff that I didn't know about, yeah, I would have been screwed. Because if it was just in a thick-ass book, I'm going to look at that book and be like, yeah, I'm going to get to it, but I'm going to make a waffle first from scratch.
I know that feeling all too well. So we haven't done this for a while, Tony. I feel like we haven't had one of these special middle of the show sessions for a while. Let's hit it.
We haven't. So I hope you're ready. Rapid fire! Rapid fire is a part of the show in which I ask you 3 questions. Those 3 questions are put in a would you rather scenario. The objective is for you to answer as quick as possible and for me not to interrupt. That does not always happen.
It never happens.
I always wonder why people chose what they chose. But if you're ready, we're ready, and I promise I'm going to embarrass you just a little bit.
all right, well, let's do it.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay. Would you rather hold a tarantula or a snake?
I think I'm going to go with tarantula.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, we got to double back on that later. Okay. Would you rather have lunch with a former president or a former sports legend?
Ooh, president for sure.
President? Real quick, bonus. Who?
Barack Obama.
I know. Like, who would not say
my
Barack?
God,
Like, everybody needs to say
well,
Barack.
I'm from Arkansas, so Billy, he's a close second. I don't care. I still love Bill Clinton and his family. I always will. So,
Heck yeah, I hear that. Would you rather hold explosive diarrhea while watching a horror movie or go to your favorite stand-up comedian with a full bladder?
Full bladder it is.
That was a quick decision.
It was like, no, screw that diarrhea.
Right. Yeah.
Every time he asks these questions, I think to myself, where am I going to find these graphics on the internet? Every time. It takes longer than editing the podcast is trying to find where these graphics I'm going to use for this.
So that last question is definitely for something like if you worked in this field, you definitely would choose the urine because urine would take a little while to smell, but that diarrhea.
But at least you'll be home.
You're done.
You'll be at home with the diarrhea. So
That's true.
If you pissing on yourself at a comedy event,
True.
That's not normal.
Right.
But what about the tarantula thing? I hate spiders.
Oh, I don't like either of them. I'm not a huge animal fan in my domain anyways, but so spider probably would crawl out of my way quicker.
Yeah. Get away. Blowing at it.
Right.
One time I was working, when I was younger, I had a job. I was working at this conservation place, and we used to have to go out, which you guys do too, occasionally, like job fairs and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And you'd go out in the public and like talk about things. So that was part of my job. And I went out to this place one day. It was at UT, University of Toledo, and it was going really slow. Like, not a lot of people were coming up to the tables. And I was there with a coworker. I was like, I'm going to go look at some of these other tables and talk to people. And this lady, she is holding a snake. And she's like, hey, you want to learn about this snake? I was like, sure. So she hands me the snake. And I'm like, it doesn't freak me out. I'm not like averse to snakes of any kind. So I'm just like holding it. And then she's like, oh, hey, how are you? And she like sees her friend and just walks away. And I was like, okay, like, I'm just standing there in the middle of a crowd of people holding a snake, and they're starting to come up to me and like ask me questions. I was like, this lady just walked away. I don't know anything about this snake. It was really awkward and uncomfortable. So there's that. If you feel embarrassed, it was a very weird moment,
man.
but.
She went and took her lunch break.
She's like, yes, you'll be fine. But anyway, we have a couple more questions here, and then we'll wrap up. So, I always like to get inside people's thought on, there's a lot of issues in any field, but specifically in the DD field. Is there anything over time, since you've had quite a bit of experience in the field, that you would like to maybe see, if you could like wave a magic wand and change something? What would you kind of... what would you do? What would your thoughts on that be? That's a hard question, I know, but...
It really isn't. It's just that what I'm going to say is not very popular for people with developmental disabilities. I wish that we would see them as individuals, as sexual beings, and understand that they too have those desires, and that the huge barrier they face when trying to navigate relationships, and... if we could just be more open to their needs as opposed to looking at it as so black and white as sex. I think that would be my magic wand. Like if I could wave that over everybody to help them understand that, just because you have a developmental disability, your needs sexually don't just disappear. You still have the same parts, and that, you still have the same desires. And it's about connection. And it may not even be about the actual act of sex. So I have a huge soapbox, so I'm going to end there.
Hey, well, you're the first person to bring that up on the podcast, so I think that's a great point, actually.
And it's so very true, because even what is classified as sometimes quote-unquote behaviors, which we like to call reactions, are sometimes based on these challenges that people who have ID or a DED they're confused too. Yeah, they're frustrated, confused, and like, what do I do when I'm feeling like this? I mean, I'm dealing with teenagers myself right now, and the people told me that they couldn't get a waiver. I need a second opinion, personally. But, when we really look at it like that, we need to be able to offer some kind of sanctuary. Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah,
that's definitely something, being on the other side of things, I would like to be able to help with. Whether it be offering classes on human sexuality or something like that for individuals with DD and ID. And, just being able to normalize those conversations for them and for their guardians and anybody that opposes them being able to just explore some information about their own bodies. And I'm a huge advocate of just teaching people about human sexuality isn't necessarily about teaching them about sex and being able to have sex. It's about teaching them about their own bodies, to understand who they are and their needs and their desires, and that they are people too, and what they're feeling doesn't make them different. And the fact that, many times people in our field are sexually abused 7 times more than typical people. So if we are telling people that they have a hoo-ha and Kaka and whatever, it is,
Yeah.
some foreign name, when it's time for them to have to sit and testify against those people and they don't have the right names for their own bodies, they're never going to be prosecuted for the things that they do to our people. So being in the position that I've been in, I've heard these stories so many times where people have been assaulted and nothing's been done about it. And they have to continue to walk down the street and see that person or ride to work or whatever, So just the more knowledge we give them about their own bodies, the more they'll be able to identify the things that are happening to them and quicker so that we can prosecute those people. So
this goes back to Pat Stevenson when she was on. She was very open about trafficking, sex trafficking and stuff like that. So it was a wonderful episode. Anybody listening or watching who has not seen that episode, please go back and watch it. She gives a lot of insight and a lot of education behind things to look for, people to contact, all of the above. So
she does a phenomenal job.
Yes, she does. I just feel like we're so primitive as humans that we continue, like when we get something great and good, like a new computer or Facebook and stuff like that, like we're, oh, yeah. But then we forget about the simple things that we should be discussing. And that's proper body terminology or, safe touch, unsafe touch. These kind of things matter to a lot of people. Two of my older kids are getting ready to go to camp. Every single parent in there, especially for the past couple of years, you've been huddled up with your kids basically for a very long time, and they're getting ready to go to camp. What kind of background checks? Who's CPR and first aid certified? Is there anybody else there? Is this boy or girl? Like, so every question that was possible, a parent asked. But I agree with you again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I feel like that could be its own podcast, actually.
Really
I'm glad
good.
you brought that up. That's really an interesting topic. And that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to do with this podcast is raise awareness, even within the field. Like a lot of people probably don't know a lot about this kind of stuff. And it's important to get that information out there. So, thank you for bringing that up. I think we could probably make that its own discussion at some point. I really feel like, especially if you're really interested in that topic, we'd love to have you back and talk about it again. And
so interested.
Yeah, that would be great. A great topic.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up here, why don't you let people know if they're interested in learning about you, about your business, anything where they can learn more, social media, email, website, all that fun stuff.
Okay, yeah. Our email is goodlifeads at gmail.com, and our website is goodlifeservices at .com, actually, goodlifeservices.com.
Okay.
So, but that's our social media right now. So, and I just started TikToking, but it's very new, and as of this week. So my mentor in the DD world has been on me about doing some social media stuff. So I bit the bullet and I started this week. So.
Well, now I finally have a guest that I can tag on TikTok with all of our stuff. Not a single provider. Well, no, one has had a TikTok and that's it. So congratulations on bringing it up into the future. And we want to thank you for coming in short notice on this wonderful St. Patrick's Day.
And I just want to put a quick plug in there. I fully support this lady and her venture. So, you get a stamp of approval from Friends for Life, from Tony Stewart. if you go here, I don't know how much my word means to anybody, but I definitely think...
You're actually hurting her business.
Yeah,
right
that's what I was thinking. Like, if I put this out there, she's about to lose clients.
I don't think so at all.
No, but, definitely. I hope that you can find some good staff. I know right now staffing is tough.
It is.
But, keep your head up. Anything we can do to collab and help, introductions to other agencies. We work with a lot of great people, and it's better to, if you want to go far, you go together. If you want to go fast, you go by yourself. So we're trying to go far.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.